Hi! What's happening, everybody? Welcome to the program. It's December 19th, 2023, and this is The Jeff Gerstmann Show. It's a podcast about video games, and I am your host for this week's podcast about video games. They call me Jeff Gerstmann. I just knocked my other webcam off my monitor. As bezels get thinner, we're tackling the tough issues here this morning. As bezels on monitors get thinner, as monitor panels become thinner and more paper-like, where whilst we hangst our webcams? How will we keep our webcams stable in the new year? Jeff Bezos is here to answer the question. It's space. It's space. In the live chat here, Ripe Live Jam says thin Jeff Bezos. Yeah, yes. And Rad Jago says, get a Vesa mount. Come on. Come on. Get this sensible talk out of here. We're going to concoct, so we're going to have some kind of contraption. We're going to dangle it from the ceiling. That way the webcam can swing back and forth. It's going to be an intense year next year. It is going to be an intense year next year, isn't it? We're going to, oh man. America. Yeah, pipe clamp adapters. I've got a series of those that I thought would actually work for stuff like that, but no. But no. I'm drinking the number one energy drink according to our energy drink list. It's the Rockstar Pure Zero Fruit Punch, which I cannot find locally reliably anymore. And so I had to take matters into my own hands and buy a case off the internet. I had to get me an internet case of energy drinks and get it sent here. So very excited to be drinking. As far as I can, as an energy drink expert, I suppose, as a leader in the field, maybe. It's number one on the list of drinks that I've been rating for a long time. So I don't know. We're double fisting that and a coffee because I don't know. Because my daughter just got over being sick. And the day that we sent her back to school, my son got sick. That's how it's going around here. Fucking awesome, man. Jesus. I don't understand why parents homeschool their kids, but I understand why parents think about homeschooling their kids. Because my daughter goes to school for about 2 days and then brings home something else. But that's just having kids. That's just, it's her first, it's preschool. So it's her first time being indoors around a bunch of, especially, pandemic kids that had even fewer opportunities to spend time around other children over these last few years. Like she's, this is really her first, these last few months have been her first regular experience of being indoors around other kids. And so, yeah, anyway, I don't know. As long as all the other kids are getting sick, hopefully that means that my son will not go through this when he starts preschool in a few years. But anyway, he's upstairs and I'm watching him here. He's upstairs. He's got some toys and Daniel Tiger on the television. I don't, TV for kids. Not to just sidetrack into parents' territory here, but the whole how much TV should a kid watch, not watch, all that other stuff is a really weird. I don't know. We were much more restrictive with our first kid, which I think is pretty common when it came to what she watched and how much and all this other stuff. And then by the time my son was born, my daughter was watching a lot more TV because she was older and all that other stuff. And so now he's seen a lot more TV than she did at her age. And I don't know, his vocabulary is incredible. His talking is not amazing, but he knows. He doesn't say the word butterfly correctly, but he knows that that's what that thing is, and he's got a bagu, So it's coming along. As far as video games are concerned, I have been continuing to I bought an OLED Steam Deck. These limited editions are finally sold out, by the way. They lasted for a good long time, so I feel like if you wanted one and didn't get one, you made a choice at that point, because they were in stock for weeks and weeks. It was very shocking, honestly. They're limited in the sense that they are gone now, but not limited in the sense that they were gone in an hour, which I think is when people say limited edition, that's, you think shoes, you think all this other bullshit, you think all this artificial, we got drops, man. We got a drop. And if you're not on the app, and if you don't get picked in the auction to buy the shoes, because everyone loves Ticketmaster and everyone loves the process of buying concert tickets. And so it's great that they are figuring out different ways to bring like aspects of that experience to purchasing shoes and graphics cards. I ended up buying my graphics card off of a fucking reseller site known primarily for selling shoes. And because those scumbags will do anything to make a buck, they were like, whoa, we should get into graphics cards. And so when it came time to start a business and do all this stuff, I was like, well, I should probably have a 4090. And went ahead, and it was actually not marked up that high. It was not marked up that high. But StockX is shitty. They're scum. They're scum. Conceptually, I don't even know them as people. Maybe they're the nicest people in the world. But they're scum. As a business, it's just a scummy business. They should make more. That was my answer. And I was in a Facebook group for people who like shoes. That's a sentence I just said out loud. I think I still am. I don't know that it's not as active as it used to be because no one went anywhere for several years. And I said, I'm really sick of this whole process, because people would go like, oh, I caught another L. I didn't get the shoes, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, all right. And I got to a point where I was like, I'd really like these, like I have a specific year of Jordans that I like, and I like to buy those. And when they're in neat colors, I think that would be fun to own. And then it was like impossible to get them and all this other weird shit. And it was like, this is gross. This is like, at some point, just make enough for the people who want them. And like, this is stupid. And someone who worked at a major shoe manufacturer, might have been Adidas. Now that I think about it, it was either Adidas or Nike. I don't know. But said, yeah, totally. It's a bad, kind of agreed, but also was like, logistically, it's super impossible to get this right. It's not necessarily that they're trying to make this, because it needs to be limited in a sense that like people need to feel special when they get them, which I get it. That's a failing in that's humanity. Humanity has failed because we like to feel special. We like to feel like we have we suffer from, you ain't up on this. It's bad. It's fucking bad. And I feel like it's a little bit less bad. I feel like kind of, well, I don't know. I snapped out of it a little bit because because I started working from home, and it was like, oh wait, I don't even wear shoes anymore unless I'm going somewhere. And then I've got this ratty old pair of fucking Adidas NMDs that I throw in. I bought a new pair because the old pair was falling apart so much. But the old pair is still easier just to throw on when I'm taking out the trash or going down to the store or doing whatever. If I got to go somewhere and look like presentable, which again is rare. I didn't go to the Game Awards this year. This would have been an example of like, oh, maybe I, would need to do something like that. Then maybe I would, then I would don a pair of shoes. And I have all these shoes. I have I think this is the pair I wore to the, I can't believe these are right here. That's stupid. I think these are the pair that I wore to the Summer Game Fest. And I think these are cool shoes. They're not comfortable to wear, so I'm not going to like wear them around the house, but like I think this is the exact right year of Jordan that I care about. This is the only model that matters. Anything that came before it or after it, fucking who cares? That's it. This is it. So I have these exact shoes because these were the first pair of Jordans I got were 4s, and so that's why. But also I think it's, it's I don't think it's a necessarily weird opinion that 4s are the best ones. Some people like 3s. I don't know. 3s are, I'm kind of whatever about them. But 4s, it's about 4s. And so I have like 3 different pairs of 4s in different colors and all of that sort of stuff. And yeah, I don't know. They're not comfortable though anymore because I got really into all the stretchy fabric NMD and all the prime knit this stuff, and so shoes feel so confining now. You know what I mean? But anyway, I bought those kind of before everything started and everything, before everyone started working from home and all that sort of stuff. And then once everyone started working from home, I was like, I don't need to do this. Like, who was I doing it for anyway? Like when it came time to pack up and move down here, it was like, I've got a gigantic box full of shoes and I have not really worn them. So maybe I'll just start wearing the shoes that I own. Maybe that'll be the thing I do. So yeah, I don't know. It is what it is. I don't know. But the whole limited edition thing is gross. We've talked about it before, but I think, when it comes to like graphics cards and stuff like that, I think it's a little more understandable because at some point there's an aspect of it where you're like, sometimes these things are just hard to make, and sometimes the parts are in short supply and whatever else. They actually are supply constrained. But all this like shoe stuff and Supreme and all this other horse shit is just like, get fucked. Angry Mobosi says, I think I've bought one pair of shoes since the pandemic happened. Yeah, I think I am in the exact same boat. I bought one pair of shoes to replace my fucked up NMDs, and they were not super comfortable. And so I am wearing my old ass fucked up pair of NMDs still. When it's shoe time, because we don't wear shoes in the house, and so I have a pair of slides. I have like this pair of Adidas slides that, like, if I got to go out back or whatever, like, when I'm out with the kids and we're walking around the neighborhood or whatever, like, I'll just throw something on. Who cares? But whatever. Video games, the finals. I'm highly conflicted on the finals. I'm curious to know what people think about it. People seem mixed, I guess. I don't know. Like, I guess I would say mixed is maybe the reaction that I feel like I've seen to the finals, but not necessarily in a, hey, it's the worst game in the world sort of way. More in a, it's kind of whatever, or people are really enjoying it. And I think the breakdown is, if you are playing it with a set team and you are playing together in a squad of 3, you're probably having a much better time than people that are just like solo queuing up or with strangers. I played some of the beta and felt like this seems promising, but there's something off about it. And then here's what happened. I went through the tutorial the day it came out. When the Game Awards happened and they put it out, I loaded it up and it forces you into like a little tutorial thing. So I went and did that. I was like, yeah, I've played it before. I played the beta, so whatever, and went through that, and then didn't have the time to play a real round of it, so I just let it sit, and then I fired it back up, and it's the default mode, or the mode that it throws you into, is 3v3v3. It's first person shooter. It is one objective based mode where you are basically grabbing an item and bringing it to a destination, and then it has to sit at the destination before it cashes out. And so while it is sitting there, another team can come up and steal it. And so whoever holds the point, basically, when the timer elapses gets credit for the capture or whatever. In this case, it's a box of money. It's a vault and it's like it's a money thing instead of a flag or a bomb or whatever the fuck. And it has a lot of equipment, and the cool thing about it is that it has a high level of destruction, and it has a foam gun that lets you plop down foam and jump on it, and which is handy if you, let's say, blow up a staircase and need to get upstairs. You might need to create a path with foam to get up there. And that part of it, from just a straight technical perspective, I think is really awesome. I think it's a really nice looking game. It looks really sharp. It's good, tight environments. Very, it's just like, here's, the map I was on mostly through the beta and stuff was just like, hey, here's a bunch of, it's a tightly packed set of houses, and oftentimes the things you're trying to get are upstairs. So there's a lot of opportunities for someone to fuck shit up by blowing a hole in the house and then climbing up there, or bringing down the floors so that the thing you're trying to get drops down a floor, which is always very alarming. And so like that aspect of the game, I think, is really great, because destructibility in first-person games felt like it was going to be something of a trend, and then it wasn't. Like Battlefield Bad Company happened, and people were like, this is amazing. And then, you had Battlefield games where they were like, we've got our new technology. There is intense destrucity in our game. We're going to levelate this. We're going to levelate this level, bring all the audio up, compress it. And you're going to blow a bunch of holes in things. And then everyone instead said, what if we made games run in 4K? And then all of it went away. It was like, what if we decided to devote all of our graphical power to like minimal improvements in resolution? Instead of doing anything awesome, what if we just made everything look sharper? And that's where we are. And so a lot of that stuff went away. It's a little more complicated than that. But generally speaking, it feels like everyone made choices that got us away from dynamism in our games. That's why Teardown is so amazing. And so, that it seemed like a future unrealized. And so the finals is actually kind of a weird game out of time. It feels like a game that came from a timeline where everyone said, no, we love to fuck shit up. Let's fuck up more shit, bro. And I'm like, yes, I love to fuck shit up. I was born to do it. And so from that specific angle, I think the finals is really impressive. But actually playing it and doing all of this team stuff and do I want to be a medium-sized guy or a small guy or a big guy? I think the medium-sized guy can heal better, and so it's kind of a class-based game. But rather than saying this person's a medic, it's like, you're medium build, you're small build, you're big build. Tag team champion, big build. And so that, like, I don't know, that aspect of it's a little weird. I played my round of it. I won. Our team won, not through anything that I did, or from very little from what I did. I healed another player. I covered I got on the high ground and shot some folks. And then I uninstalled it. I'm like, yeah, cool. All right. This is not, I just don't want to do this. And I think for me, a lot of it comes down to the feel of the gunplay. So the Finals is a first-person shooter that is being billed as it's a lot of ex-DICE people. So it is like, it has some Battlefield roots there underneath it all. And you feel it. You feel it in the way they're like, what if you had like 4 different pieces of fucking gear on you and you held down this and did this, and then you're like, oh, now you've got your shock paddles, or now you've got a jump pad, or now you... Like, it's a little... fiddly, I guess I would say, with the tools at your disposal, which, like, hey, on one hand, you're like, it's always cool to have more tools. We love cool tools, but the way that you deploy them, especially on a controller, I don't like the feel of it. And also, when we're talking about feel, the movement and the gunplay, especially like when you were up close, because these are a lot of urban, it's a lot of buildings. So you're like you're really close to other enemies a lot of the time. And there's something about those up close encounters in a Battlefield game that feel very dumb. Of like, here's two players kind of skittering around in front of each other going, half of the finals felt like that, because of the encounter range and kind of where things are happening and whatever else. And so I don't really like the feel of the shooting and the encounters and whatever else. And so it is vaguely like Battlefield, and I have very much enjoyed Battlefield games in the past, but usually it's because of their size and scope and vehicles and all the ridiculous sort of stuff that you can do in a Battlefield game. And so this feels like it has a little bit of that Battlefield DNA, but does not play to the strengths of that DNA, if that makes any sense. And so that's as far as I'm concerned, that's the finals. Like, people have been angry because some of the voice lines are generated by AI. I have had the volume down low enough that I couldn't really tell which was which. So I can't really report on that. I didn't really hear anything that was obviously computer generated. But I just think that game's going to attract a certain audience, and like, I think you should check it out. I think is also what I said back when they announced it was out now. Like, you should get a look at the tech end of this game. You should look at those buildings getting blown up and the foam that you're laying down and kind of how that stuff flows. It's really interesting to see in action. But I don't like much of anything else about it. And you might end up loving it. And but you should give it a look either way, as it is free to play. it is very easy to give that a look, I suppose. I haven't checked it out on consoles. I probably won't, unless something changes about it and they're like, hey, honestly, if they put a solo mode in there, I would probably at least like spend a little more time with it, like go back to it and check it out some more. That wouldn't necessarily play to the strengths of the game as it's designed, but it would make me feel less like, because I want to learn the game and play the game without feeling like I'm letting like two strangers down as I'm trying to figure it all out. That's a big part of playing team games in a solo capacity, is if you feel like it actually requires good teamwork and you're like not really sure what to do. Like, here's an example. The game has like shock paddles, and so I think you would use that to bring a player back. But when players go down, they turn into a little tiny statue. I don't know. And so I don't know if you can zap those with the shock paddles to instantly revive someone, or what the deal is with those. But also, you can just walk up to someone and it says hold Y to revive. So I ran up to a teammate trying to revive them, and I started fiddling through, like, you hold down left bumper to bring up a wheel, and then I was going to select the paddles, and as I'm doing this, I see it just says hold Y to revive. I'm like, oh, okay. And so I start hitting that button, and my guy just holds his hands out, and a meter starts filling intensely slowly. And I'm like, oh, wait. Clearly I've fucked up, because the answer is to actually switch to the shock paddles, because they simply must work faster than me waving my hands at a fucking body. But by the time I had decided, like, oh shit, I should probably change, I was killed and moved on. I guess that's, hey, you learn that and know it forever, I suppose. But yeah, I don't know. It's not my thing, I think is probably the nice way to say it. It's the accurate way to say it. Like I don't necessarily think it's a bad game, but as I've played it in the beta and then checking it out now that it's, kind of that it's out of beta and they launched their season, I'm like, I don't like the tone of this. I don't like the gunplay in this. I don't like the way the shooting feels. I don't like the options. When I look at what it looks like as you're unlocking more stuff, I was like, there's nothing here I want to shoot for. There's nothing here I want to aim for to try to unlock or care about. Like, yeah, I don't have room for this game in my life right now. And so that's that. That's the finals for me. But yeah, I'm curious because I look at my Steam friends list. I've got like one person on there that has played the game for 30 hours. And then most of the other people have played it for about 25 minutes. You know what I mean? And you look at it and go like, oh, okay, yeah, that's yeah. Someone is getting something out of the finals, but it's not. I don't know that I know that many people that are digging into that deeply. But I'd be curious to see if that game has any legs, and how it all goes. But yeah, seems like a mix of people. Like, yeah, but it seems like I'm not necessarily the only person to have not found it to my liking. With that, let's get into the news. Naughty Dog! Naughty Dog had to make a decision about its future. It had to take a long, hard look in the mirror last week. Probably not last week, probably a little while before that. And decide what they wanted their future to look like and what sort of studio they wanted to be. And as such, they have decided to cancel the project. They refer to it as the project that we've been calling The Last of Us Online. There's no easy way to say this. We've made the incredibly difficult decision to stop development on that game. This is, of course, the people were looking at this as the expanded version of the multiplayer stuff that was in the first game, and which did not necessarily blow up, but at the same time, the people who liked it really liked it. I don't like The Last of Us per se, but I messed with that online mode a little bit out of curiosity and was like, this is actually kind of cool. Like, mechanically, I just still don't know that I necessarily like The Last of Us in any form, but this seems like a really cool idea. So the idea that they were going to expand upon that was something I was at least like, huh, yeah, all right. Yeah, that could be kind of neat. But they've killed it. And they've explained why in a way that I look at and say, yeah, you're probably right. So let's see here. Let's get into the rest of the multiplayer team has been in pre-production with this game since we were working on The Last of Us 2. They iterated on their concept during this time. Their vision crystallized. The gameplay got more refined and satisfying. We were enthusiastic about the direction it was heading. In ramping up to full production, the massive scope of our ambition became clear. To release and support The Last of Us Online, we'd have to put all our studio resources behind supporting post-launch content for years to come, severely impacting development on future single-player games. So we had two paths in front of us: become a solely live service game studio, or continue to focus on the single-player narrative games that had defined Naughty Dog's heritage. And so they have shut down development of The Last of Us Online. This is something they should have probably already known. But maybe maybe they got to a point with it where they're like, no, if we want to do this game right, it actually needs to scale up big. And it will devour this studio. And so, like, then at that point, right, you're like, okay, well, if this game's going to become bigger, it's going to need this many people on it. And then they probably go to Sony and say, we need this. This is the number of people it will take to run this live service game for X number of years. We will need a team of this size. We will need this many people. We will need, and that's something that over time you could start to outsource pieces of it potentially as you get a firm grasp on what you're dealing with and what the path looks like in terms of like, okay, how do we do season 8? You eventually get to a point where like, oh, okay, we have started another studio in another location, and now we are going to start to pass off live ops to some of this other team or something. But I imagine when you're first getting it off the ground, Especially if you're Naughty Dog and you're like, this is The Last of Us. This is a franchise we care deeply about. We can't just hand it off to somebody and go like, go with God, Like, what are they going to do? They're going to give it to Bend and go, hope for the best, or just outsource it completely? Like, no. It's The Last of Us. They care too much about it to let it go. So I look at it as something where in that context, it really does end up coming down to a resource crunch. And so you go to Sony and you say, this is how many people work here right now. And if we want to do this game right, we would need to devote, 90% of these people to servicing this ongoing game at the expense of everything else we've ever wanted to make here, and every other game you've wanted out of us. We will just become this studio. Or you can let us hire. They probably at least ask the question, right? They're like, oh, or can we hire up another 200 people and or have this plan to eventually start to hire up and spin out and whatever it is. And I think with the economy where it is right now, with Sony just laid people off too. Like, they're not immune to it. They've laid people off. Everyone has. Naughty Dog, I believe, had a bunch of contractors that they decided not to renew contracts on. So, they're not necessarily laying people off, but they are, kind of quietly doing little bits and pieces of that sort of stuff as well. In reducing their ongoing workforce, I guess is what you might say. And so I don't know. I look at it as, if they did decide to pitch Sony and say, hey, here's what we would need resource wise to make this a reality. I could see Sony looking in the mirror and going like, do we really believe in this? Can we spend this amount of money right now hiring up? Can we do this? Is this the right time for it? Is this the right property for it? Is this the right studio for it? Is this the right? And, maybe the answer just came back no. Or they were like, hey, not enough people here are passionate enough about this thing to work on it for the next decade. To run it as a live service. The core team loves it, but like outside of that, people are like, when are we going to make another big thing? I got an idea that's going to be better than that train thing from the other game. I don't know. We don't really know those parts of the story. We can only really kind of speculate at, what were the checks and balances that led to this decision point, I guess. But like, I was recently speaking with someone who found themselves working on a live service game at a studio that needed to hire a lot more people to suddenly service that live service the way it needed to be serviced. And it sounds harrowing if you are in a position where you have suddenly found yourself like, oh, this is a successful video game. We don't have enough people to keep the machine running. Like, season 1 is done. Season 2, we've got ideas, but like, so I think that I look at this and go, this is a very real concern. This is a very real, this is a very honest situation. You just look at it and go like, yeah, totally. Like this, and I think they made the right call. At the end of the day, is The Last of Us Online going to be this huge, massive thing with huge widespread appeal and ongoing microtransaction dollars and what, are they going to put, can I fucking pick up a rock, throw it, and then when another player goes to look over and see what happened with the rock, I come up with like a fucking rusty screwdriver and fucking stick them 5 times in the sides and then twist their neck off their head and then hit the gritty? Like, am I buying fucking Bart Simpson skins? Is Michelangelo from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles coming up behind me with a fucking big rock and bashing me in the head with it in the most violent way imaginable and then doing a little dance and then Buddy Holly is played? Like, is that The Last of Us Online? Are they going to live service it like that? Because it seems like if you want to make money in the live service game, you don't necessarily have to do the crossover stuff. I mean, there are live service games that are only really dabbling into that in ways that kind of not necessarily maintain the vibe of it, but are not as ridiculous as the examples I just gave. So I look at that and go, no, The Last of Us, the faction stuff in Last of Us was cool. It was really neat. An expanded version of that would be neat, but I don't think it's something. I don't know. If I were a betting man, and I don't really like to gamble all that much, to be honest. I would not put my money on a live service I would not put the entire studio on the line to support The Last of Us Online. So I look at it as like, this is a 100% like correct move from them. It would have been really neat to see what that game was. And like this announcement hit, and then a screenshot of like the title screen or like the lobby screen leaked out afterwards. Cause they'd been doing tests, and people have been, there's been plenty of leaks about what that game was going to be. But like Naughty Dog has a role within Sony to make these giant marquee things. The Last of Us is also a property that they don't want to like fuck up, because they've got this TV show and this other stuff going on. Like there's value to that IP that if you suddenly said, oh, all of the people that would have made the next chapter in this ongoing saga are now supporting this multiplayer game that is very light on story. Anyway, here's season 3 of a television show, and like, Joel's mad again. Like, whatever. They probably fuck that whole thing up eventually. Not because any of it will be bad. It's just like, hey, this is a different thing. The Last of Us, the television show, the reason it gained this more mainstream type of attention is because of the attention to storytelling and detail that those games have, that they have tried to translate into the television show. And so you're strangling that whole thing off. It's just, I don't know, it's a lot of moving pieces. So I look at that as not a risk worth taking, unless you are going to hire all new people to work on it, or hire up quickly in some form, but maybe over time eventually. But I would not put the entirety of Naughty Dog in some form of risk by pinning all of their future hopes on running this live service game. And maybe if it failed, they could kill it and go back to making single player games. Like, that's certainly an option, but I bet that a lot of people that really care about making big story driven games at Naughty Dog might not stick around if suddenly it was like, oh, we're not going to make any big crazy set pieces anymore because all we do now is make new maps and skins for the season 4. We got new shanks. We got a new class. They can hold 2 knives, and one of them's rusty and one's not, so it's dirty. I don't know. Season 4, you can play as a dog, and the dog has a name. So The Last of Us Online is no more. Sensible, if you ask me. Bunch of hacks and leaks here at the end of the year. There was a big, I don't know about big, but Rocksteady is out there saying, hey, a bunch of stuff from the Suicide Squad game is floating around out there, so watch out. It's a bummer. I guess they ran some kind of closed alpha a couple of weeks ago. And I don't know, people recorded it all and put it online. I don't know. They airbrushed the watermarks out. I haven't gone to look at it because, like, whatever. And that game's out in February, so I don't know. And then a lot of Insomniac stuff. A ransomware group got a hold of, well, according to Video Games Chronicle, who is sourcing Cyber Daily in Australia, 1.67 terabytes has been posted online. This is apparently 98% of the total data that they stole, with the scarier part being that means that potentially 2% of what they did steal was in fact sold. And so that stuff has been around, and now it is making the rounds, and people are digging through it and finding like a lot of scare, like according to some of the stuff that this group posted online, it seems like they may have had scans of employee passports, which is super weird to just have floating around out there. A lot of budgets and internal documents. According to Video Games Chronicle here, a publishing agreement with Marvel that promises future games. A lot of information and assets for upcoming products and projects, including Wolverine, and apparently like a 10-year roadmap for what the studio would be working on. I have not pursued the specific data. I don't. I mostly just want to say that sucks, and also Insomniac. Okay, when you think about and maybe The Last of Us, the story kind of taps into this a little bit, but look, you can make a 10-year plan, but this is the video game industry. You can have rough idea, and maybe it will come to pass. But I think, the thing I would say is, assuming these documents make their way into wider circulation and all of that sort of stuff, consider that a 10-year plan is tentative at best. Once you get out past one or two projects, it's a lot of like, oh, wait, this doesn't make sense anymore. Or, oh, this business arrangement has changed. We know we're doing this deal with Marvel instead. We're doing this instead, like all of that sort of stuff. So take all of that with a grain of salt. That's not me saying it's inaccurate as of the time it was stolen or as the time it was generated. But again, no one really has a hard and fast 10-year plan. They have ideas about what they would love to do over those 10 years. But when some of that stuff doesn't happen, don't get all bent out of shape about it. I don't believe Sony has issued any comment on this stuff at this time. This is an increasing problem, right? I mean, the ransomware stuff. We got our first look at GTA 6 through similar means. Though I don't think that was as sophisticated of an operation. I think that kid got popped, right? They busted that guy. I don't know if this team has been taken down or anything like that, but the idea of a lot of these projects, we went through this with movies with the whole Sony Pictures. That was Sony Pictures, right? And they were like, what if Spider-Man could rap or whatever, whatever embarrassing, like Spider-Man's movement is so kinetic. What if he was an EDM DJ or whatever the fuck the studio notes were, like embarrassing. You just look at it and go like, oh God, people were the fucking worst. It's the fucking most embarrassing fucking suits in the world. It's like, oh, my kid likes this stuff. What do we do? And it's like, yeah, fuck, shut the fuck up. Let the creative people do the creative work. Like, you don't need to put, so you can go to a party and say, it was my idea to make him an EDM DJ. Dumbass. Fucking jack-offs. Anyway, this is increasingly becoming a thing, right? I mean, the ransomware, the kind of hacking situation, the infrastructure outside of games and entertainment, just the kind of more widespread, like, issues that have been, like when my daughter was born just recently, there was there are computers in the delivery room, because the nurse comes in and scans a thing and it's all hooked up to a computer and we can see, all the baby monitoring stuff. It's just a PC, just sitting there doing what it do, and it had a screensaver on it that was, a lot of it was like, here's the employee of the month and all of this other shit. And like, you should keep your passwords safe. And then one of it was like, hey, if you see weird stuff, report it, because ransomware at healthcare facilities, there's an increased threat. We were getting increased messages from, was it the DOD, the Department of Defense, like whoever it was, whatever government organization is like, yo man, cybercrime. And so part of the screensaver was like, this shit is going around, so do not get our hospital infected with ransomware. whatever you do. And that's scary. You know, hey, the Insomniac 10-year plan gets leaked. It sucks. That's terrible. That's unfortunate for all of them. People's personal data, like all that stuff, that's bad. Xfinity just got hacked recently, and apparently a bunch of personal data got out. They're still, you know, I don't think they have fully disclosed the ramifications of that. But the idea that like there are aspects of our infrastructure, be it the, you know, like, oh, we've got to upgrade computers at the places that keep our water safe because other governments would love to fuck our shit up, and state-sponsored hackers are out there literally state-sponsored. We like the cybercrime fucking we're there. It's happening. It's way less sexy than it seemed in the books, but you know, they're gonna try to fucking fuck up our power grid, and it's no good. They're gonna try to fuck up our power grid. It's wild shit. Speaking of wild shit or wild shit? Well, you be the judge. Hideo Kojima is teaming up with A24 for a Death Stranding movie. The Death Stranding movie was announced a little while ago as something that they were looking to do. And according to Polygon, A24 and Kojima announced their intent to collaborate on this stuff, and that seems like something that is actually happening. There's quotes from Kojima are going around about this that's saying basically this isn't something that's going to be an exact, you know, retelling of the game or something, that this is maybe another story in that world and whatever else. Let's see here. So the Kojima quote in the statement, according to Polygon, is there are a lot of game adaptation films out there, but what we are creating is not just a direct translation of the game. The intention is that our audience will not only be fans of the games, but our film will be for anyone who loves cinema. We are creating a Death Stranding universe that has never been seen before. Achievable only through the medium of film, it will be born. Okay. Executive produced by Barbarian executive producer. Oh, no, sorry. Co-produced by the executive producer of Barbarian, Alex Levovici, and Kojima. No director, no writer, no plot synopsis available, according to Polygon. And so no immediate information if any of the cast of the game will even be involved in it, because the story might just be completely different, right? You know, you don't need Sam Bridges if you're not telling the story of, you know, all that sort of stuff. This made me realize as I went through all the, like, people are very damp. People get very moist. People get very excited about A24. And I was like, I don't understand. I don't like, as someone who, you know, does not make a lot of time for movies, there sure are a lot of people that bend over backwards to tell you how much they loved the latest A24 movie. And so I went and looked at the list. They, you know, on their website, they have a list of every film that they have been involved with. And Uncut Gems is one of theirs. And that was something that I was like, I very much want to see Uncut Gems. Red Rocket is one of theirs. Another one I do want to see at some point. But as I was looking through the list, I realized I had only seen one A24 movie, and it was Spring Breakers. And Spring Breakers is a great movie, so I'm on board. They also, their name is on something, as I was scrolling through the list, their name is on something called Barely Lethal, which is a teen romp comedy about a girl assassin who decides to run away from her handler, Samuel L. Jackson, and go to high school. And then an assassin finds her, which is just a great, dumb premise for like it that feels like a premise that has probably been done to death a million times. But I watched the trailer for that and I was like, this is A24, huh? Okay. And that's an old one, so I don't know. Maybe they're more careful with the films they put their name on these days or something. But there was a lot of stuff very early on. It was like, oh wow. But whatever. They made Spring Breakers, and so they lifetime pass, baby. Lifetime pass. And they're doing the Iron Claw, which is the Von Erich, the story of the Von Erich family in wrestling, which I don't know that that's something I especially want to see, because the story is so fucking tragic that when I've heard enough old-timey wrestlers tell that story enough different ways in enough different formats that I'm like, I don't know that I need to go see a dramatization of this. But I see why they would make it, because holy shit, when you dig into the story of the Von Erichs, it is tragedy on top of tragedy on top of tragedy. And apparently that movie is very good. So, there's that as well. We talked about last week how Time Splitters is dead again because Free Radical Design was shut down by Embracer. Eurogamer has a little bit of detail from a developer who was at one point on the project that I thought was a little interesting. Apparently, originally that team was working on, well, the quote here from the developer told to a fan site called the Free Radical Archive. Said, the quote here is, originally it was a Fortnite clone. Nobody wanted that, really, not even us, but we didn't have much of a choice for a long time. And then eventually the project did make kind of a turnaround and suddenly became a remake of Time Splitters 2 with some of the Future Perfect levels thrown in. This is actually like this doesn't sound great, honestly, but this was the pitch they made to the publishers. And the developer, I guess, didn't stick with the project because the developer says that was the pitch we made to the publishers. It still might have changed down the line. But the pitch to get off the Battle Royale was apparently, it was a remake of Time Splitters 2 with a couple of levels from Future Perfect, an original level, and a couple of brand new sections or something along those lines. Which, I don't know. When you hear, hey, there's a new Time Splitters in development, you don't think it's mostly a remake of Time Splitters 2. That seems a little less interesting, I suppose. And then goes on and has like a little bits of story about it, which the idea that anyone remembers, even the people working on the game remember that Time Splitters had a story. This quote, I'm just like glazing over. It was going to be a what if where Corporal Hart went through instead of Cortez, so we can make things slightly different. In the original, and then Eurogamer notes, in the original Time Splitters 2, it's Cortez who does all the adventuring and gets to be the solo star of Time Splitters Future Perfect. In this version, it would have been Hart. Oh, okay, man. Time Splitters has a monkey in it. Time Splitters is like, I just think of that as it's a sandbox. It's a GoldenEye sandbox. Like they sat down and said, let's make another one of these types of shooters and just make a zillion different modes and put a bunch of different shit in there and there'll be some monkeys. So it's funny to me that got this breakdown of the deep lore of Time Splitters, but whatever, it did have a story. 22 Cans. Remember 22 Cans? Peter Molyneux's studio. And I guess Guildford. Apparently, according to Video Games Chronicle, and I have since verified this, that they did post this to the Steam pages, both Godus and Godus Wars have been removed from Steam. The news story is that that the games are going to be withdrawn from Steam, but they seem to be gone now. The quote that 22 Cans has posted is, regrettably, due to an upcoming technical change to Amazon Web Services affecting our ability to serve necessary game files to new users, these titles are to be withdrawn from the Steam store, please be assured that existing players can continue to enjoy these games without interruption. Which there's some technical thing there that doesn't make any sense to me, because like by new players, okay, you're saying existing players can continue to play the game, but you cannot serve new files to new users. What if I uninstall and reinstall the game? As an existing owner, can I still play it, or what is the I don't understand the exact well, anyway, they don't give any further details on that. So if you already bought Godus or Godus Wars, remember Godus was a Kickstarter game that they marketed based on, hey man, the guy that made Populous is making another game sort of like Populous. And then Godus came out and it was embarrassingly early access. Like the type of early access you don't really see anymore. The type of early access where you're like, this is not a game yet. Like you uploaded a proof of concept that you're selling. Like this, what the fuck is going on? And they issued updates over time and then launched Godus Wars. And Godus Wars, when you launch it, because as someone who launched it the other day, it launches like Godus Wars is meant to be the multiplayer kind of conflict-oriented take on Godus, and Godus is more of a city world builder, populous kind of thing, but not as good as Populous. As a Populous fan, Godus was never, ever as good as Populous was. So I saw that and I was like, why does 22 Cans still exist? When was the last time anyone heard from them? I thought it was Godus. They did the curiosity what's in the cube thing where you tap the screen to erase cubes and a guy won something and then never actually got his prize or something. Godus came to phones. And if you go to the 22 Cans page, like the Godus entry, and Godus is still on phones, if you are so inclined. And it's got all the Laurel Leaf best of App Store, best of 2016, 2014, whatever it was. Like apparently it was at least somewhat acclaimed on iOS and Google Play back then. I feel like the standards for phone games have ratcheted up quite a lot since then. I don't know that I would say that Godus would hang these days, but I guess I have not tried the mobile version of Godus. They also worked on a game called The Trail that is a mobile game. And so it's funny because when you launch Godus now, it has all this early access stuff. Like it's got like devs talking like this. Okay, in this build, we've put this in here, and it's got audio of some developer talking about what is in this build of the game. And so it's like this failed early access thing that they put out and intended to update, and at some point they stopped years ago. It's not like they were pushing out updates a couple weeks ago and then went, this Godus thing isn't working out. Like it's been pretty dormant for a pretty long time. So yeah, I don't know, kind of a weird thing. Yeah, Video Games Chronicle kind of says, yeah, at the center of the cube was a video from Molyneux shown only to the eventual winner. This is what happened when in Curiosity, when you opened the cube. Brian Henderson, in which it was revealed that Henderson would serve a large role in Godus, reigning over all other players. Henderson was also due to receive 1% of the game's revenue. In 2017, it was claimed that the game had never made a profit, so Henderson received nothing. Great. And now you can't even... I don't know. It's on phones. Ryan Henderson's still waiting for that for those Godus checks. Any day now, they're going to turn the corner on it. It's going to start coming in, man. Yeah, revenue is not profit, by the way. A weird situation. The idea that 22 Cans still exists, but you know, they transitioned into kind of doing their stuff for mobile, and I suppose that makes sense. So What else is going on? The Xbox Series X and S got crazy price drops. You could find the X in some stores. I don't know if these prices are still valid, but it seems like they are. But they were going for like $350, which is like low enough that I had a moment. Yeah, the prices are still good. So yeah, some retailers are doing $350, some are closer to $400. But yeah, Target's got it for $350, and sounds like $100 came off the PS5 as well. So yeah, I suppose, hey, it's the time of the year for it. I had a minute there where I was like, $350. I should buy another Xbox, and I did not. But like that price is down there pretty low. The Series S, yeah, is showing up in some places for like $149, which is pretty wild. And yeah, I don't know. Those are prices that like even as I'm saying them out loud right now, I'm like, well, man, I should go get another. I have an S here already that I don't use. That'd be dumb. But I had a similar reaction. So it sounds like they're going to stop sales of the current Apple Watch for some stretch of time. There's some patent dispute around the Pulse Ox functionality, where a company that owns the patents on using lights to read your blood oxygen level or whatever the hell it is suing Apple and whatever else. So it sounds like that they were like, oh, we're going to have to, right after Christmas, conveniently enough, they're going to stop selling the current Apple Watch until this gets resolved for some chunk of time. And my dumbass, my first thought is, well, I should buy an Apple Watch. I did not. I came close. I went through the process of like, how much are these? Like $430? Like, well, yeah, I mean, I guess that seems reasonable. And then they're gonna take them away. So, and I decided not to. I bought an Apple Watch. Let's call it Series 3, somewhere around there. I bought an Apple Watch and did not get much out of it. And then as soon as I had kids, I had to stop wearing it because my daughter would just smash on the screen and do all kinds of, she would activate all kinds of weird stuff. And so, and now that I work at home, I do not need it. I don't need meeting reminders on a watch that it's not the life I'm leading anymore. I'm proud to say I am not leading a life where I need to wear a watch. That feels right and just and good. And I would like to thank you for supporting me on Patreon and enabling me to not wear a watch. This maybe one of the most tangible benefits of all of this. You can go to patreon.com/Jeff Gerstmann. Keep me from knowing what fucking time it is. Thank you very much. And in our final bit of news here, James McCaffrey, the voice of Max Payne, Trench from Control, Alex Casey in Alan Wake 2, has passed away at age 65 due to cancer, multiple myeloma, specifically speaking, from the TMZ report. But yeah. Just an amazing voice, the voice of Max Payne. The Max Payne, the game, would not be what it is. It would not have hit as hard as it did if it had not been for an amazing vocal performance. And great roles in a lot of other Remedy projects, and of course, has done television and such around that. He's not simply in games. He's done a bit more than that. I don't have his full credits in front of me right now. Rescue Me. He was on Rescue Me. And it's very sad. Like on one hand, I'm like, well, it's, hopefully he got to see Alan Wake 2 come out and people really loving it and seeing kind of, his performance in it specifically and all that sort of stuff. But cold comfort at this point, I suppose. And so I just, wish his family the best and all of that sort of stuff. It's it is too young. 65. And with that, why don't we get into some emails here. podcast@guard.bike is the email address. That address is getting so much spam from some bullshit. I get so much spam from so much bullshit these days, but like there's been one that's coming in. There's like 2 a day here now, multiple. This one email says 3 hours to go for more podcast listeners. And then 3 hours later, a follow-up email, get more listeners now is starting. Like trying to get me to attend some seminar about how to get people to listen to a podcast. Gross. Anyway, Grant writes in and says, why is everyone talking about pro versions of the current consoles? I cannot see the case for the upgrade. We're not at 8K yet. 120 frames per second is just something I can't see happening at a reasonable price point. Sure, ray tracing would improve, but is that marketable? When I see games, I find it so hard to tell. This isn't like last generation when we all got 4K TVs and 1080p outputs looked really soft on them. On top of that, the generation was so slow to start, we're nowhere near finding the limits of the current consoles. Most games run fine on last gen still. That new God of War game I saw side-by-sides and can barely tell the difference. I just cannot see it happening. I do not think they've even justified their current consoles yet. Yeah, Grant, you're not wrong about ray tracing. I like ray tracing from when you tell me about it, and when you do it in such an extreme way in a game that you can't help but notice. I think it's really cool. It's really neat technology. But you're right, lighting in games has been very good, and it's still such early days for ray tracing that even if we got an upgrade, because over here on the PC, this is what, the third generation of graphics cards that have had ray tracing? Because the 30 series had them and the 20 series had them, right? And then on the 20 series, it was a disaster. On the 30 series, it was not actually that much better. And I've got this 4090, and I would say we're at a point where, as someone who runs at 1440p, I can usually turn on all the ray tracing and stuff runs. Stuff still runs quite well. But it's funny, they like game support is still all over the place in such a weird way when it comes to ray tracing. Call of Duty added ray tracing in a patch recently, but it's only enabled on the menus. It's like a test. They're like, it's a technology test of all this. We did all this cool ray tracing work, and it only works in the lobby and in the firing range. Oh, okay. It doesn't happen in game. It's just if you want to see Snoop Dogg fucking full on path traced, you can. Forza wants to split a lot of those differences in some cases too, where it's like, oh, we've got ray tracing in the menus, but not in this, not in the replay. They're yes in the replay, but not in game. And on PC, you can kind of fuck around with that a little bit more. And so I turned all that shit on and didn't notice any of it in Call of Duty. And like last week, I fired the game up and started freaking out because I played a match of Call of Duty and then it pumped me back to the lobby. And as I was going back to the lobby, every fan on my PC spun up. And I was like, what the fuck's going on? oh shit, did something break? And so they, then it went into game, and the fans spun down again, and I realized like, oh right, it's because they added ray tracing, but it's only in the menus. And so I went in and turned that shit off, and then looked at it. I was like, I don't even notice. So yeah, ray tracing seems like it's a cool thing for developers. Like there's, something about the idea of lighting your scenes that way, but since they can't guarantee that everyone has ray tracing supported hardware, they still have to do lighting the old way too. And so, we're just not there yet with it. Eventually, that stuff is basically free, right? I mean, if we follow this path of technology wherever it goes and don't die in the process, then maybe that pays off and maybe that starts to be really cool. But lighting is already, when you do your lighting well, it still looks fantastic. So yeah, I agree. Like the idea of, and this is, some of the leaked specs or the supposedly leaked specs of a supposed PlayStation 5 Pro did imply that it would get a bump to ray tracing. And, the ray tracing on the existing PlayStation 5, it's there, but it's a lot of situations where, you have like a Spider-Man 2 type thing where it's like, do you want to run at 60 or do you want to run at 30 with ray tracing? And the answer is 60. Because the lighting still looks pretty good. So it's just not ready. It's just not ready. And I don't think developers are I guess like are developers like pushing for this? I don't actually know the answer to this question. If developers are just like, we've got to get over the hump on this ray tracing stuff because it's going to make everything so easy for us to do lighting or, whatever it is. And so it's a little bit of this chicken and egg thing, but you have to put out the hardware if anyone's going to develop for it. But also, if no one's developing for it, then you don't have as many reasons to buy the hardware and blah blah blah. So you end up in kind of a weird thing. But when it does get there, and it will, I do think it will. You end up in a situation where like, okay, now it's less work to light our games this way or whatever. But who knows when we'll get there, and when we'll get there across all platforms. It's like, especially on the PC, we've got such weird high end and low ends now. Not that the Steam Deck is a massive percentage of the overall PC user base or anything crazy like that, but if we consider that segment of the market, that's not a portable ray tracing is not we'll get there probably, but it's going to be a while. It's going to be expensive. People aren't going to want to upgrade. People are going to it's you have to drag people kicking and screaming into the future on some of that stuff with very murky benefits, I suppose. So I tend to agree, but also I tend to come away from current console games feeling like the consoles are a little underpowered, and it would be nice to not feel that way. It not at the expense of having to buy an upgraded console. I think that's kind of crummy, and I still don't think that whatever they're going to put out is going to match where the PC is at. I guess it just used to feel different, man. And consoles are not like this anymore, and they haven't been this way for a couple of generations, but it used to feel like, and this is as much of a statement about where the PC was at and kind of the PC being in a funky place and everything else, but like it used to feel like a console would come out and it would blow away a lot of what you could get on a PC at first. You'd be like, oh, this is a generational leap. This is such a step ahead. Oh my God, how did we suffer with these bullshit old things for so long? This thing's incredible. And then the PC would catch up, the Voodoo 2 would come out or something. You'd be like, oh, fuck. Holy shit. and the consoles would have to catch up and leapfrog ahead again and again and again. And, this is, I think, in a lot of ways going back to even some of the 2D stuff, And it's not that way anymore, and it hasn't been for a very long time. And it used to be when, because you'd have situations in the early PlayStation 1 days where, you also had arcade ports that you could look at. And you had these situations where you would look at Tekken on the PlayStation and Tekken 2 on the PlayStation and be like, this is at least as good as, if not better than, the arcade game. And Tekken 3 came out, and when Tekken 3 came out, we looked at it and said, this actually does not look as good as the arcade version of Tekken 3. Like, there's bits and pieces of it that you just look at it and go like, oh, actually, the PC version, or the arcade version has just a little bit more going on, and whether it's effects or just resolution or what have you. Tekken 3 on the PlayStation instead made up for it by saying, check this shit out. We've got extra characters. We've got 9,000 more modes and all of this other, and so they pulled ahead in a different way, right? But that was always the chase, consoles felt like a true leap ahead. And now, now especially probably because consoles are just PCs in different boxes, there's the homogeny there. There's there's sort of a, everything kind of just feels the same. And the consoles feel like PCs with the sliders set to medium in a lot of cases, because that's just where it nets out. Like, oh, from a price standpoint, from a thermal wattage, like all of those things just kind of end up in a situation where it's like, okay, this is where we want to go. And I'm sure, for a lot of people that have normal PCs, that's probably still the case of like, oh, this is more powerful than my PC. I and a lot of people, not just me, but you end up in those enthusiast lunatic circles where you're just like, yeah, I don't know, I've got a 4090. It's not, so even these pro consoles I look at and go like, I don't know, man. From a power standpoint, that don't impress me much, as they say. So I'm with you, Grant, to a certain extent. But I guess the thing to remember is that a lot of people, there are probably a lot of people that still don't have a 4K TV, or they have a bad one, and so there's probably still plenty of use cases, plenty of reasons for people to enjoy a console and to upgrade a console as well, if the price is right and the performance benefits are sound and solid. But I would rather take that money and just keep investing in the PC, because that's a lot more fun. It's ridiculous. The prices are out of fucking control, and they have been for a long time. And I'll tell you, even as someone who fucking went to the goddamn sneaker website and bought a goddamn 4090 like a stupid idiot, ray tracing is still not amazing. Like when you see the impressive demos, it's stuff like, look at Quake 2 running. Like, Quake 2 RTX is one of the coolest things I've ever seen. But it's Quake 2. It's not a modern game. So yeah, I don't know. That stuff's frustrating. High-end PCs are cool. And you can tell yourself on the back end, you're like, well, Steam sales are better than sales on consoles. I think that's probably still true, but probably not to the extent that it fully makes up for especially with how crazy some of the prices on high-end graphics cards these days, or whatever else. But yeah. A lot of sales on Call of Duty. Speaking of just like sales on games, I got an email. So I don't own, I only own this year's Call of Duty on Steam. So according to Battle.net, I bought a handful of Call of Duty games on PC. and then did not buy this year's game, or I suppose even last year's game, because I got that on Steam as well. But I got an email that was like, it doesn't even say what the discount is. It's just like, this year's Call of Duty is on sale and we've got a personal discount for you. This is non-transferable. This deal is only for you to buy Call of Duty on Battle.net. Click here to see what your savings are. I did not click through. I deleted it. But it's just a very weird email. That game's on sale on consoles anyway. On top of that, this is kind of a... Yeah, I don't know. Like, that game over the last few years has been going on sale in this holiday time frame, but something about this year's abundance of sales on that game feels like desperate's not the word, but a little like, oh boy, yikes, oh geez, we got to do something. How many levers can we pull to get these numbers heading in the right direction? And then at some point, all of it's going to end up on Game Pass, right? We'll see. What if they didn't? What if they just said, actually, we're just going to keep selling it for $70? That'd be very funny. Ian writes in, thoughts from the Game Awards, though these are not really about the Game Awards per se. It says, the finals definitely needs more maps, feels very bare right now. Yeah. The only thing I'm more certain of is waiting at least 5 years after launch before buying Light No Fire. After No Man's Sky, why would anyone buy it at launch? That's fair. I might also say that after No Man's Sky, Hello Games probably knows they need to deliver more. Also, I think they've set an expectation now of a lot of free updates for a game. And so I could see it being a little more... I could see people being a little more willing to buy that game early. Or, buy that game at launch, knowing that, like, even if the game's not there yet, they'll get it there. They bought themselves a lot of rope. They earned a lot of money. They bought a lot of rope with that money, updating No Man's Sky a zillion times. But yeah, sure, if you don't want to play Light No Fire until it's done, then wait until they've issued years of updates, I guess, assuming they're going to go that route. I mean, maybe they just ship it fully formed. Or fuck, man, maybe they just go like, actually, yeah, No Man's Sky was our free one. Now, you're going to give us $20 every time we issue one. Maybe they'll have a different business. Who knows? Who knows? We don't know. That doesn't seem likely. But I don't know. Nathan from Tumwater, Washington writes in and says, "Are you going to miss E3?" Yeah, I am. I guess. There's something about a trade show. There's something about walking a show floor and just running into people you haven't seen in years, and catching up with them, and running from appointment to appointment, and just the whirlwind of games and all that stuff that I think is a lot of fun. And I will miss that. But ultimately it's the people, and other. Summer Games Fest, I am 8-Bit and Jeff Keighley and all that, like coming together and putting that whole thing on, integrating Day of the Devs into it and everything. I think does a lot of the stuff that E3 was doing, and so I think that's cool. I don't know. I'm not. Yeah, I don't necessarily. I would miss it, but not in a way that I'm like, there's nothing like it, because there's kind of other stuff like it now. Ken from Massachusetts writes and says, back in the 90s, did any of us foresee Tekken being the last game standing in the great 3D fighter wars? Yes. No, I guess not. I don't know. I will say, yes, I definitely would have picked Tekken to be the best one of those and continue to be the best one of those. But also, I would not have expected Virtua Fighter and Dead or Alive to just vanish. You know what I mean? I figured that we would still continue to get VF games and, and then occasionally a Dead or Alive or whatever as well. But yes, at the time, Tekken was, like I've been in arcade, and this is American arcades, mind you. But I had been in plenty of arcades where it was like, oh man, everyone is crowded around this Tekken 2 machine. And yeah, there's a Virtua Fighter machine over here. I guess it would have been what, VF3 at that point, maybe still VF2. And not touching it at all. And I like Virtua Fighter a lot. For me, the big problem with Virtua Fighter is that I don't know if it was just the cost of the cabinet or whatever it was, but it was always more expensive to play than even Tekken was. Some arcades would have them both at the same price, which was like 75 cents or $1 in some cases. Tekken was often flashier. Tekken was revealing new characters every couple of weeks. Like in arcades, like a new character would just pop up and you're like, oh my God, because it had all those time release characters. And so there was just a lot more constant excitement around Tekken. Like you'd come back 2 weeks later and be like, there's a fucking bear in this game now. And you're like, what? Yeah. And you come back a month later, like, by the way, there's a dinosaur or a kangaroo in this game now. Like, fuck. Just a much more mainstream, exciting game, Tekken. Virtua Fighter. Low-level Virtua Fighter is not that fun over time. You can only mash punch and then end with kick so many times before you're like, I don't want to do this anymore. And the rounds can be over so fast that when you're paying $1 a game and you're just getting fucking blasted, or even if you're doing the fucking blasting, like you're just like, all right, this is a huge waste of money. Virtua Fighter often felt like a huge waste of money. And I think that gets lost when we talk about it now. Like people don't remember that like arcades were charging $1 to play VF. I think Virtua Fighter 2 is a great game. I think Virtua Fighter 3 is terrible. I think the idea that they said we're putting VF3 TB into arcades with online support, which they apparently just did in Japanese arcades. Like, why? This is the bad one. Like it's the worst. I would rather play Virtua Fighter 1. But in a world where Virtua Fighter 4 and 5 exist, why would you ever want to look at fucking VF3 again? Oh my God. What the fuck is wrong with you? Anyway, like play 5, man. You could be playing 5. Any time you spend playing Virtua Fighter 3, team battle or otherwise, is time you could be instead playing Virtua Fighter 5s. Man. Don't waste your life. Life is too precious to play VF3 TB. Same goes for Tekken 4, but I think no one gives a shit about Tekken 4. Tekken 4 is the bad Tekken. Anyway. I might also say that Tekken Tag Tournament 2 is on the cusp of being bad Tekken. I was excited when they said they're doing another tag tournament. I'm like, oh, hell yeah. And that game came out. I was like, this is, yikes. The first Tekken Tag I thought was incredible. It was also out at the right time on consoles and everything. It was a very exciting time. Very exciting time. Let's see here. Daniel from West Virginia writes in, says, I got a Steam Deck OLED and it's great. I was playing in bed, lights off, the other night, and a loading screen got so dark I thought for a moment it had powered down. Yeah, that's how you know you got the real shit. When you're asking yourself, is this thing even on? That's how you know you got that real shit. Anyways, I have been searching for the perfect Steam Deck game to zone out with. At the same time, I've been reminiscing about Phantasy Star Online. Did PSO not sell well? There seem to be very few other games that scratch the same itch as PSO for me. It seems like no one out there is interested in making a PSO-like, for the lack of a better term. Any recommendation for something like Phantasy Star Online on the deck, or should I just load up original PSO and live that 1999 life? Any idea if the mod scene has PSO Online working on the deck? Also, I know PSO 2 New Genesis is a thing, but I've just not been able to get into it. Yeah, PSO 2, you know, it's not the same thing. It's similar, but it's not the same thing. But yeah, Monster Hunter, yeah, Manny Biggs in chat says Monster Hunter kind of went for that vibe. And yeah, it sort of did. Insofar as they started trying to charge for a hunter's license back on the PS2. The thing about PSO is at the time, it just seemed like it seemed like Diablo with guns and robots and a different camera angle. So I would put it in that same sort of vein. And once you're kind of playing in that space, you could say ridiculous sentences like, well, Borderlands is kind of like PSO. And it sort of is, in that they are all loot games. But there's nothing that hits it the way PSO hits it, you know? There's nothing that actually does it the way PSO did it. I can't think of a single game that I go like, oh, well, here's the game that here's the next PSO or whatever. Like it doesn't, there's just nothing. Yeah, Destiny for a while, I think people were like, oh, is this going to kind of be, is this sort of doing that sort of thing? Like, no, not really. Not really, but you know, insofar as they're both kind of sci-fi futuristic games and whatever else, like you do kind of end up with something resembling it, I suppose. But yeah, you know, getting Phantasy Star Online running on a Steam Deck is actually quite easy. Or I would say the easiest way to do it would be to emulate the Dreamcast version. There's an emulator out there that will automatically kind of manage the connection process and connect you to the fan-run private servers. There are not a ton of people playing that one, though, so you kind of want to jump through some extra hoops to try to install PSO Blue Burst, which I bet would run okay on a Steam Deck. I'm sure if you Google that, someone will tell you how to do it, assuming it's possible. And that's probably, if you were looking for actual like fan communities and people actually still playing the game, I bet a Blue Burst private server is going to be your best bet for that. I would probably jump through the hoops to get that running on a proper PC first, just to get it all up and running and get a little familiar with some of the aspects of it before you go try and get it to boot on a Steam Deck. But I'm sure there's a tutorial. Seb Mall in the chat says Affinia, which is one of the private servers for Blue Burst, runs on Steam Deck. So there you have it. That could be cool. That could be cool. But yeah, PSO2, you know, it's nice to have a brand new gate and all that other stuff, but it just doesn't do it the way it needs to be done in its original form or in New Genesis form. Neither of them really do it right. But yeah, someone said Warframe. Like, yeah, you know, Warframe not entirely unlike PSO, but not the same either. Not the same either. So yeah, that's kind of a weird one. Jim from the Gold Coast in Australia says, I posted a link in a local Aussie gaming group of IGN's review of the Scam game the day before. a lot of the comments were still like, oh, they mustn't have gotten the bag of money in time, or IGN is too busy taking PlayStation's money. For as long as I have known of the existence of IGN in the early 2000s, there's always been these kinds of comments. Where do you think the origin of this is, and why is it particularly stronger around IGN? While sometimes I feel their scoring is off, I've never thought they took payments for reviews. Yeah, it's, yeah, there's no... fanboys on message boards are dumb. And they always have been, and they always come up with the most fucking impressively unhinged conspiracy theories about why a game they like didn't review well. And a lot of it boils down to what you're seeing. You know, it's like, oh, well, I guess this, my favorite, and we would get this a lot too, you know, at GameSpot back in the day. It was, oh, Sony is paying them to review Nintendo games lower. Or, you know, or Sega or Microsoft or whoever, you know, it all went every single way. Sega must be paying them to hate these PlayStation games. Nintendo must be paying them off to, oh, you know, you didn't really get a lot of talk about Nintendo paying people off. Instead, when Nintendo games got high reviews, it was like, oh, these fucking reviewers will suck the dick of any Nintendo game that comes across their desk, or, you know, like whatever it is. That was always just the generic fanboy talk, I guess. So it's that's not to say that there is not like money involved in advertising and all the other stuff. I mean, you know, I ran into some fucking bullshit back around, I don't know, let's call it 2007 or so. But that was not a case of reviews being bought. That was a case of an advertiser saying, we're not going to advertise because you didn't like our game. Which, you know, okay. That's fully within their, like, no one's forcing them to advertise. And so the right answer is to go, oh, okay. Yeah, all right. Well, we stand by our review. Anyway, but that's not a case of like, I mean, what people are saying here is like, oh, like clearly the reviewers themselves are being bought off. Like this reviewer must have got a car from Sony or this from that, or, you know, and no, I've never seen any evidence of that. The only thing I remember ever happening kind of in the back then anyway, is, you know, you would hear stories about smaller, there's another question here somewhere about kind of fan sites and the kind of smaller sites of that era. And maybe I'll find it if I can find it. But the thing we would always hear is, you know, because the fan sites did not have the money coming in that a GameSpot did, they were actually much more susceptible to be swayed, because an NVIDIA or someone could come in, or, you know, anyone making a game and say, oh, you don't like our game? We're not going to send you anything ever again. And because those sites are not making enough money to just go buy all of that shit, they then are much more susceptible to making it right for the company. And I remember seeing, you know, you'd see reviews disappear off some random, you know, Nintendo, whatever, NintendoHotZone.net, bananasxbox.biz, you know, whatever the fuck. They were very easily swayed because that shit was expensive. They did not have the money to buy it themselves. And so they're like, well, I gotta. And also there were sometimes you would have these writers that were writing for these fan sites that had dreams of writing for an IGN or a game, or, you know, making their way into a full-time position, like a full-time salaried position somewhere. And so they would, you know, be scared of, oh, I'm going to be blackballed for doing this and I'll never work in this town again. And so I got to make it right. This must just be how it works. And it was never how it worked. And so you would see all these kind of smaller sites that would be getting fucked over by shark ass, savvy ass PR and marketing people that knew where they could apply the pressure. Because if they come to me with that pressure as the reviews editor, I'd be like, oh, it's okay. Yeah, all right. Great, wonderful. If you have any, the line was always, if there are any factual inaccuracies with the review, we would be happy to take another look at it. If you have anything factual that is incorrect in the review, we will definitely take another look. But if they're coming to me and saying like, we think it should be higher, we think you should like our game more, like, get the fuck off my phone. What the fuck? Okay, I bet you do. That's not a shock. We disagree. If you think the reviewer didn't do their job, or if you think that there's something you could point at to say they said this about the game and that's not true, we'll happily look into it. And so, yeah, the idea that like money, how many times did that happen? I got a handful of calls. I remember I remember getting a handful of calls. There was one about a Ratchet and Clank game, early Ratchet and Clank, like the second one or something like that, second or third or whatever it was, like one of the first couple. I remember getting a phone call from whoever was handling PR for it, and they were like, "This is," and I was like, okay." And you hear them out, you know, it's like, you don't be a dick about it. You're not gonna be like laughing them off the phone or whatever. But like at the end of the day, if they don't have anything to go on, if there's no like, hey, this review says this about the game and we think that is inaccurate, then you're like, okay, well, all right. And so you just kind of move forward. And there's been cases where like, oh, there was like a factual inaccuracy here, and then you have to go like, okay, well now what? Is that factual inaccuracy something that you just kind of correct and move on with an editor's note? Does it change the shape of the review? Is it something that reveals that the reviewer did not play enough of the game? There was one case back in the day, and this was on the PC side when they were still separate. So I was not directly involved with this, but someone, a freelancer, reviewed an MMO, and you know the review came in, it ran, nothing came of it. It was a trusted freelancer that, you know, some of us had worked with for years and years and years, and so you like, okay, this person's solid, and that's that. And then the developer of the game came and said, hey, we've got server logs of this person's account, of this person's playtime, and they played this game for it was like 4 hours. It was like some number that for an MMO you would look at and go, what the okay, like clearly that's not enough. And so you have to look at it and go like, all right, fuck, all right, we're taking this review down and we're never working with this person again. All you can do at that point is make it right, you know. And you know, that's very frustrating. You know, you don't spend a lot of time investigating why that happened, because it's a, you know, when it's a freelancer, it's very easy to like, okay, well, that's that. Someone internally, you might have been like, all right, what the fuck just happened? Before, you know, and then it's like, okay, can this person still work here, or are they done? I don't know what would have happened if that had been an internal person. They probably would have been fired. Now that I think about it, but maybe there's a way forward, but yeah, I don't know. But there are a few situations. There's that. There's like, I had a situation where someone turned in a review and we ran it because, so, you know, oftentimes you're only getting one copy of a game. And also, you don't have a big enough staff. Even back then, when we had a big staff, we did not have enough people to have multiple people playing a game and fact-checking someone else's review or something like that. That was just not, you know, everyone was working on their own shit. And so you trusted that, like, okay, you played the game, you reviewed it, you're doing this. It was a case, like, it was, and I don't remember the exact situation or which game it was. It might have been an early one of those console only Call of Duty games. like before Call of Duty became, Call of Duty. But the review said something like, it'd be cool if there was more in this game, like, I don't know, vehicles in the multiplayer or something like that. And one of their big features for that year is we've got vehicles in the multiplayer. And so the review goes up and people are like, what the fuck is this? What the fuck? And so you have to figure out what the fuck happened. Like, okay, how does this happen? And you have these situations where you're playing a game pre-release, and so you can only play during the set times when the servers are up pre-release, or they're having a session for reviewers, and so you might only get 2 hours. I don't remember if that was the case here or not, but reviewing multiplayer games pre-release was the shits, man, in a lot of cases. For those reasons, because you would have a set amount of time with kind of populated servers that you're just like, okay, what, I remember here, I was reviewing Call of Duty World at War, the 5th Call of Duty game. And they did sessions. They sent the game out to people and they did sessions for it. And I remember being on the headset and you'd hear, we were playing with QA testers and all these other people that were like murderers because they're QA testers. They played the game for hundreds of hours. And you could hear someone in the background of the whatever, the cubicle farm that they were playing from going like, hey, take it easy on them. Like, don't just shoot them. Just like, shoot them a few times and let them live. Like instructing the QA testers to not kill the press. And I remember being on mic and saying like, hey, fucking do not take it easy on me. Do not. Like I'm here to fucking play this game. But there's a lot of cases of like, there are people at mainstream publications that don't play a lot of video games that are there in the session and they have no fucking idea what they're doing to begin with. And so, it makes sense to a certain extent that you would try to take it easy on those players, because if they come away from it going like, if the New York Times or whatever, not they're like, this game's beautiful, but you just get murdered over and over again. It's terrible. It's not fun at all. Like that's not good for anyone. It's not accurate, and it's not it's not good for the company making the game, I suppose, either. But just a lot of weird shit like that, But yeah, the IGN is too busy taking PlayStation's money and all that other horse shit. I think IGN probably got it more than GameSpot did, specifically because IGN was structured where they put their people against certain platforms and consoles. And so you would have individuals there who, like, I'm the guy who hosts the Xbox podcast, and I'm the guy who hosts the PlayStation podcast, and then here's the PlayStation review of this, and here's the Xbox coverage of this, and here's the GameCube coverage of this, and I think that situation of trying to split things up by console probably exacerbated that a little bit. This was at a time when GameSpot was larger than IGN, so it wasn't necessarily that they were like a larger target or anything like that. We were both, for a while we would swap back and forth and whatever, but I think that's part of it, like they presented themselves as, I'm the Nintendo guy and I think this game's great. Nintendo made a great Nintendo game. And you're like, oh, okay. Am I supposed to trust that? Because the Nintendo guy, like, you start to back that out a little bit and you go like, okay, well, if all the Nintendo games are bad and Nintendo goes away, then IGN fires all the Nintendo people. So isn't it in their best interest that the Nintendo games are good? If you want to back that out even further, then you would say, well, if you're writing about video games, then don't you want the video games to rate well because you want video games to be good and sell, because otherwise you have nothing left to review, and that's probably a little too far. I think IGN didn't help them, their case there. There was an era there where there were people working there covering games who were married to people who worked in PR on games. That, I will say, never seemed like a great look from them. They're not in that situation now. That was years ago. But But I think the IGN stuff, I think a lot of it comes from them having editors that were split up by platform. I don't know if they still do that, but like people still think of Greg Miller as a PlayStation guy. I think he oftentimes presents himself still as a PlayStation guy. Like when they started their Xbox podcast, they went and got other people for it. And so even kind of post IGN, I think there's still kind of working in that way, and I think that's weird. Personally, I think the idea of in 2023 presenting yourself as like in an era when there's never been less of a difference between the platforms, over the last decade, as stuff has moved further and further in that direction of it's all just the fucking same everywhere you look. I think the idea of doing separate coverage for separate platforms is really weird. But I think, it worked for them for a long time at IGN, so it makes sense that they would duplicate some aspects of that these days, probably because their audience expects that and wants that and whatever else. So, so I think that stuff makes sense. But like that always, that was always something that, and there was a brief window where someone at GameSpot got the idea to move to that model. And so there was like a summer there. It wasn't long where I was the PlayStation guy. And we had no idea how to do it. We were all calling the same people asking for the same things. Like, I need screenshots. It's like, okay, well, I have screenshots. I just sent them to your Xbox guy. They're the exact same screenshots. You didn't change your website, so they all go in the same place. You're not going to run them twice. And so it was a really weird fit for the way the website was designed. And then we went through a ton of layoffs. And on the other end of that, we no longer had enough people to be split up across different consoles. And so it all kind of went back to the way it was. It was a massive mistake, that change. It was a bad way to go. A really bad way to go. It's just the opposite of the direction the industry was heading in at the time. It was just like, this is just straight up boneheaded. Jerry in Wisconsin writes in and says, I've been seeing YouTube ads for Avatar, Frontiers of Pandora, that have sprinkled review quotes all over, except they are the most generic quotes possible. I think this is probably the same. Was this trailer at the one at the Game Awards? Because I saw this at some point, and I assume it was there. I forget where it was. Anyway, Jerry goes on. One of them says, technical feat, Screen Rant. Another declares the game is fantasy fulfillment, IGN. And my favorite is just the word entertaining, Game Informer. Am I losing my mind, or are these pull quotes both ridiculous and unnecessary? It comes across as parody. Whatever happened to the good old days of declaring a game was like Skyrim with guns, something both entertaining and informative. Obviously, these quotes are not a deciding factor in someone purchasing the Avatar game, but a bit more effort would be appreciated. Yes, I saw that trailer and I was like, that's ridiculous. Yes, for the same reasons that you did, because it's like they're just pulling the most kind of non-committal, like, tactical feat, ... entertaining Game Informer is really funny, because those are all things that I don't know. I could sign up for all of that, but also as someone who played a chunk of, last week we played some Avatar Frontiers of Pandora. It was so memorable that I forgot to talk about it at the top of the show. But here we are now. It's a technical feat, I would say. In some ways, I think it's very beautiful. The foliage looks very nice. I think it's fucking boring as shit, man. Like structurally and all that other stuff. You're like, it was a feeling of like, I should instead just reinstall a Far Cry game if I want to play this style of game, because it's not just that it's one of those. It does not seem like a good one of those. Just to, yeah, I don't know. You'd have to, yeah. I don't know what type of person is coming away from that game going like, yeah, man, this rips. I mean, maybe if you're like a big fan of the movies, but like if you're coming away from that purely trying to say like, this game is cool. Like, okay, sure. It's a technical feat. How about that? Aaron in Connecticut wants to know, am I killing the game industry? As I enter my 40s, I have more disposable income but spend less money on video games than I ever have. I subscribe to Game Pass and until recently earned enough Bing points to get it for free. I buy maybe one full-priced game per year, and the rest I get through Game Pass on sale for $40 or less. I don't play any free-to-play games or pay for any season passes. My backlog is so big I could stop buying games altogether and never run out of stuff to play. Am I killing the video game industry? No, you are engaging in a system that they themselves set up. And if that is going to break the video game industry, then it is the video game industry's fault at the end of the day. Or I suppose Microsoft's, if we're specifically talking about Game Pass. But, you know, Sony has its own kind of variant of it, and so on and so forth. No, because I think there are plenty of I think that's great. I think if you are finding ways to get additional value and finding ways to save money on video games, I think one of the smartest things people can do, and I'm not going to ask you to do this because I would never do this. I can't do this. Even if I wasn't doing this, I wouldn't do this. I think one of the smartest things you can do is not buy games at launch. There are going to be some exceptions to that rule, games that benefit from being like the kind of zeitgeist at the moment of like, oh, if you're playing this at the same time everyone else is playing it, you're going to get a little more out of it. I think that can be kind of cool. But at the end of the day, don't pre-order games, don't buy games at launch. Wait for them to get fixed. Wait and see what they do with their monetization stuff, and if it's gross or if it's good, or, you know, like I think having some amount of patience and being willing to wait for a sale or willing to save money, I think is one of the smartest things you can do. That said, I don't have what it takes to live like that. I want to play games when they're new, when they're hot and fresh. I need them. And so I don't think I could ever live by that advice. Also, just realistically, it's not, my job is to not do that. So there's an aspect of that for sure. But I would, certainly like to, I don't know. I like to play games when they're new. And that's crazy because games launch broken and games get fixed with patches and all this other stuff over time, and it's a major hassle and all that sort of stuff. But it's Blackie Partridge says Baldur's Gate 3 on Xbox was the first time I bought a game on release day in years I had to know. But like, okay, yeah, but also Baldur's Gate 3 existed on other platforms ahead of that, and also was in early access for a good long time. And so they had their issues that they fixed that were kind of their 1.0 launch issues. They had a lot of stuff over the course of early access that they corrected and got there with. So even in that case, it's not necessarily a situation where you're going in blind. It might be the case like, oh, this doesn't run well on Xbox or whatever, but like that, that you can find out on launch day. You can go watch a stream of it and see. But yeah, pre-ordering games, I think is I was always, hey, as someone who has written a lot of reviews of games over the years, I think pre-ordering games is fucking dumb. But also a lot of things have changed about the access that you get to video games ahead of release, because we see open betas, we see closed alphas, we see, you know, like all the other stuff you can sign up for that often gets treated as marketing. And I see why people might be incited to pre-order a game to get access to some of that stuff. We don't see enough pure demos anymore. Everything's got to have some other label on it and some sort of limited exclusivity and all this other stupid shit that, you know, it really shouldn't be the case. But there are a lot of ways to check things out. Yeah, I messed with the Tekken 8 demo and was frustrated because it didn't have any online in it, which is such the opposite of what you see out of demos for fighting games or betas for fighting games or whatever. They're always like, hey man, get online and bang on it and see how it goes. And it's like a story demo with like 4 characters and local verses. You can play against AI, which is what I did. I actually didn't mess with the story stuff. I just fired it up and looked at the characters and said, this seems fucking cool. Paul's hair, so glorious. But yeah, I don't know, man. I think you just kind of, you're not killing the video game industry by signing up for Game Pass. You know, it's if that was purely killing Microsoft's business, they wouldn't offer it anymore. They would shut it down. So, if anything, that's on them. Taking advantage of good deals however you can get them is what I say in this world. You know, your own patience for how far you're willing to go to get those deals and stuff. I'm not saying like you gotta get those doorbuster deals on Black Friday, you know, like whatever. Get what you can while you can get it, because the fucking, if you're not fucking them over, they're fucking you over. Probably. It's probably how that works. Let's see here. Let's dig a little bit into the archives a bit. This is a weird mix because I've taken some of these emails already, and I need to clear out the inbox for emails. That'll be the year-end process. We'll move on from 2023 emails and get into all these hot 2024 emails. Ian in Denver writes and says, last night I had a dream where some of my friends and I went to a GameStop and found an elusive PlayStation 1 game titled Mortal Kombat Ghost. It was supposedly developed in 1998 in the Mythologies engine, but was canned just before release because the developers thought it was so terrible it wouldn't be worth putting out, and so it became a legendary collector's item in the vein of NBA Elite. I don't know much about Mortal Kombat and never played any of the PlayStation 1 games, so I asked you, if a game titled Mortal Kombat Ghost truly existed in that area, what would it have entailed? All right, PlayStation 1, so we're probably only going up to about Mortal Kombat 4. What would a ghost entail in the Mortal Kombat universe of that era? Who would that be? Is that Kai from Mortal Kombat 4? Is that is it StarCraft Ghost instead with Sonya? Sure. Ermac, kind of a, you know, maybe like a ghost-like character. Could be, a Quan Chi backstory. Says Rain 2388. Cobra. Yeah, this is pre-Cobra. If it was a PlayStation 1 game, this is before Cobra. This is before Cobra existed. Cobra Masters. Yeah, Scorpion is, Ghost could certainly refer to a Scorpion. There was talk that they were going to do that Fire and Ice game, right? That was always the rumor. That was PlayStation 2 era. It was more of a, kind of Shaolin monks being so well received. What if they did a Sub-Zero and Scorpion-like game in that vein? And so the rumors of a Fire and Ice game were born. I don't know if that was something they actually. I can never keep that straight, honestly, about Mortal Kombat. Like, what was just the fan run rumors, and then what was real. I know they themselves have blurred the line on that over the years by putting characters into the game that were just dumb arcade rumors for years and years. But yeah, Mortal Kombat Ghost from the makers of StarCraft Ghost, maybe. StarCraft Ghost was not a good. A build of that leaked out, right? You can actually go see StarCraft Ghost for yourself these days, can't you? I thought that a GameCube build or something of that got out there. I don't remember. But I remember taking demos for StarCraft Ghost, like they came into the office and showed us StarCraft Ghost and just being like, yeah, okay. Like it was neat in a sense of like, oh, you found ways to adapt her abilities into a third person shooter, like her RTS abilities into this, and like, okay, I see what you're doing here. It never seemed all that compelling. But at least it was like, yeah, okay, I see why you would how you would adapt this stuff. You put some thought into it, and that stuff is kind of interesting to look at. But yeah, I don't know. When that got canceled, it was not. I don't know. For all the hype around it, I think once they brought it into the office and we saw it running and touched it and all that stuff, it was like, yeah, okay, yeah, all right, maybe. I want to say that was Bill Roper that brought it into the office. I mean, it would have been. Yeah, it would make sense. Yes. But yeah. Let's see here. Let's see if we can find any more. Baldivis from Western Australia. No, that's a town name. Steve from Baldivis in Western Australia writes in to say, I was curious about your thoughts on what the best Control was. Remedy's game or the Big Sean Kendrick J Electronica song? I'm going to go with the game. Parts of the song are better than the game, but the whole song, there's a verse in there that's real good. But other parts that are less good. And Control, the video game, does not have Big Sean in it, which is I like the part in Big Sean's career. I like the part where he just says ass over and over again. I like that Sean was a song where literally you were just shouting ass, 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 ass. I think that's I don't know what Big Sean did before that or after. I don't care. At least there's that. Steve also goes on to ask, also, what are your thoughts on the early 50 Cent song, How to Rob? I bought the single for How to Rob. It's good. I don't know. It's good. I think it is some of 50 Cent's best work, I guess I might say. Even like a kind of early era. Some of the stuff he put out before he kind of really blew up, I think is fascinating. Like it's good. He's good. 50 Cent raps very well. I think that, he kind of got caught up in playing the role of 50 Cent after he got super famous, and I think a lot of that material is super fucking bad. Like, oh yeah, let me put on Hustler's Ambition, or like whatever the fuck else. 50 Cent had 3 great albums in him. There's 2 great albums in him, and then one that was pretty good. I like the G Unit. I like Straight Outta South Side, where they just sat down and said, "Give me a beat that sounds like the fucking like generic karaoke version of Straight Outta Compton." Like if you were to take the synths we have sitting right here and play Straight Outta Compton on them instead of using the samples, what would that sound like? And then someone sat down and just did it, and it sounds ridiculous like on its own, but in context of the track, I'm like, it's actually I think this is one of the better songs that has G Unit on it as a whole. And Stunt 101 is what it is. It's fine. Tony Yayo's solo work, however, I think is I like it. It's not good, I guess is what I would say. Drama setter. Yeah. Tony Ayo. He's a fascinating figure. All right. Let's see what else, if we've got anything else here before we move on. Robbie writes in and says, on a recent show, you mentioned the difficulty associated with making a new Crazy Taxi game. I couldn't help but draw parallels to the game design between Crazy Taxi and early Tony Hawk. They both have arcade design roots with run and score focused and tight level design. Could a new Crazy Taxi just lean harder into Tony Hawk mentality to make it work, or am I just crazy? It's not, Crazy Taxi is about you getting from point A to point B, and a lot of times it doesn't always do it in a way that makes that journey feel creative. And so the thing about Tony Hawk is, yeah, you're trying to get around the level, you're trying to collect stuff, you're trying to do whatever, but you have a level of control over your character that makes that traversal fun, and it makes it feel like your own. It makes it feel like that you have a lot of choice, and that you have a lot of player agency in the tricks that you do, how you do them, like all of that sort of stuff. I think that makes getting around the levels feel great. And when you get into that state, that flow state, whatever you want to call it, I think that enhances it even further. Crazy Taxi, I'm not saying it's artless, because you are kind of still, you can almost kind of grind in some spots in that game, but you are drifting in certain ways. You're manipulating the gear shift to do all the crazy boost, crazy dash shit that I actually think is dumb, or the way it's implemented made sense in arcades, and when they brought it to Dreamcast, you're like, okay, I need to roll because this button shifts into reverse and this goes forward, and you go and hit them both and then hit the boost, and like it just feels weird on a controller in a way that doesn't make a lot of sense in early Crazy Taxi. But yeah, Crazy Taxi, the things they did to bring it home were things like give it a mode where you just play it for 10 minutes. And you don't really worry about the timer from a like, oh, the better I do, the longer I play arcade style. It's more just like, how many points can you get in 10 minutes? And I think that those modes ended up being better because it didn't have the same type of time pressure. But yeah, a modern day Crazy Taxi, I don't know what you do, because I think just driving around and picking up fares and driving them from point A to point B is not enough. I think that if you design the city in crazy ways that let you, and they did some of this, especially over the course of the 3 games they made, you could kind of do it. Yeah, you could make it a multiplayer game if you're fighting over fares and all of that. You could do Crazy Taxi 99, for example. Something like that might make a lot of sense. But that can't be the only mode. That's not something that's going to... I don't think that stands the test of time. So yeah, I don't know. What do you do? What kind of control do you give the player in addition to what they already have to make that fun and modern and all of that sort of stuff? I think if you just do it as a pure throwback, even if you kind of modernize the dash and some of the other controls, I don't think that that'll be enough to be like, hey, check out our $70 Crazy Taxi game, or whatever their goals are for that stuff. I just don't think it's enough. I think the premise is too thin. The premise is too arcade focused to work without major changes. And the more changes you make, the less it's Crazy Taxi, right? So that's why it's a really hard. I think that's a hard needle to thread. And yeah, you have to answer those questions too. Like, are you putting Offspring in this game? Or are you getting modern bands to do covers of Offspring songs? No. You're probably just getting Offspring. But is that good? Like, you can play that game already. A new Crazy Taxi that just has those Offspring songs in it. Like, all right, what do you? Yeah, okay, sure, yes. Alma Corsaria says 100 gex is the modern day equivalent. Okay. So what if you go stylistic, right? What if you want to modernize the style in a way where you're replacing the bands with, what if you've just got some hyper pop nightmare Crazy Taxi game? Like, okay, sure. You're probably alienating a lot of the nostalgia market on that front. I would be okay with that. But you probably have a lot of people who go like, they don't even have Offspring in it now. So it's you can't satisfy everyone. Yeah, hyperpop nightmare gig economy Crazy Taxi. Like, yeah, do you update the story to make it way more depressing? Because that's not what Sega's trying to do here. They're trying to make uplifting blue sky crazy fun games that you're just like, yay, right? I don't get the impression that maybe they'll surprise me here, but I don't think that the new Crazy Taxi is going to go out of its way to make a big statement about rideshare services or the place of taxis in modern society and whatever else. At most, you would have a situation where you are the last taxi and you are racing against time from a bunch of rideshare services and they're the bad guys. You know, like, I think that's probably about as deep as you would get. Because yeah, they did that clicker, the idle game, the Crazy Taxi themed clicker game, which was like had amazing writing in it. But I don't think you do that again. I don't think you do that in your like mainstream Crazy Taxi game. I think that made sense for what that thing was. But I think it's just tough. I don't know. It's tough again, but like if I had that idea, then I would be trying to make it or something, right? I don't know, but I don't have the lockdown. Like, here's the great idea of what you do with Crazy Taxi. I just, because I guess I just never had a real true passion for Crazy Taxi to begin with. Like, it was cool. But I didn't really like playing it in the arcade. And I think the home version had some compromises as well. And I just didn't care about Crazy Taxi 2 or really 3 all that much. Yeah, I just like BD Joe. I just like to say, well, let's go make some crazy money. No new records here. I just like to do that from time to time. Like, it's not. You could replace Crazy Taxi with a soundboard and a picture of a Pizza Hut, and I would be like, cool. Cool. This is what I want out of Crazy Taxi. We gonna have some fun like that. Okay, great. I would love to have some fun. I want to go to the Pizza Hut. Take me to Tower Records. Like, yeah, all those fucking dumb fucking voices. Hey. I'm incontinent. My adult diaper sprung a leak. Yeah, I don't know. And yeah, what businesses do you put in that? What brands sign up to be a big part of that? I think if I were running the Crazy Taxi business over at Sega, the one thing I would do is sell time-limited sponsorships and say, oh yeah, this year they're all KFCs, but if KFC doesn't re-up, then those could all be Del Tacos next year. Season 2. We couldn't get all the voice actors back, so take me to the Popeyes. I don't know. Yeah, that's what I would do. I would do sponsored buildings and have those sponsorships expire, and you update them over time. And you're like, oh, Walmart doesn't want to re-up. Also, like, that would be a weird. Like, Walmart is such a big footprint that if you put a full-on Walmart with a parking lot in the world, it would almost be too much, too weird, too big. Drive me to the Papa John's. I don't know. Brandon writes in and says, why isn't Xbox lean more heavily into indies for Game Pass? Since Xbox Arcade ID at Xbox should go to these indies and vice versa, and say, hey, market this game, will go on Game Pass. It's a win-win. Indies get marketed and Microsoft gets even more games. With a larger indie market share as the go-to indie support team, they have a much bigger chance at new breakout IP becoming Xbox exclusive, or at the very least free on Game Pass. This shit just makes sense, right? Well, I don't, they do sign up smaller games onto Game Pass. They I feel like they're pursuing the what they feel are the right games, but I don't know. I think you would hear the indie games that make their way onto Game Pass. I think you've heard some stories about that being amazing for them. Yeah, like a Tunic, for example, was. Some say Tunic was the best game that came out that year, and if not, damn close to the top. So, they have done exactly that. I think it's very hard to kind of pick your shots on that stuff, and sometimes they are coming into it. Sometimes Xbox feels like they're coming into some of these games a little late, where the developer, for whatever reason, just hasn't prioritized bringing the game to Xbox, and so it launches on Steam and Switch or something weird like that, and then it blows up, and then, like, Vampire Survivor type situation or something like that, Microsoft comes in, Xbox comes in. And then when the game does come to Xbox, it ends up being a Game Pass game. You've seen some of that happen here and there. So I don't know. They have a team of people that I think are looking at this stuff very closely and trying to place the right bets. And I think they do bring indie games to Xbox, but they can't bring them all. It's not like they have infinite budget for that sort of stuff. And you have some developers that maybe don't want to cannibalize their early sales on other platforms. And so in some cases, it probably works out for them to come to Xbox later, try to do the Game Pass deal later. If their game is picked up and gone, a little viral or whatever, they can do that. Otherwise, you have a game launching on Steam and Game Pass at the same time, and then all your refund requests just say, oh, this game's on Game Pass. And maybe that's not a great thing for every developer out there. Depends on what your Game Pass deal is. I don't know. Anyway, that's going to do it for us here. I want to thank everybody for hanging out. Next week, Tuesday is Christmas Day. Is that right? So I don't know what our schedule as a family is going to be like over here and what we're going to be doing. I am trying to do a podcast next week. Next Monday is Christmas Day. Well, that's the 20th. Oh, you're right. The 24th. Okay, it's not the 25th into the 26th. It's the 24th into the 25th. And the 25th is Christmas Day, not Christmas Eve. Okay. All right. I don't know why I get that confused. We haven't even had time to decorate the tree because everyone's been sick. So we have a tree, undecorated. Anyway, so yes, I am planning to have a podcast for you next week. The schedule will, for the next couple of weeks here with the holidays and everything, will be a little bit up in the air. I'll try to get it locked down, but as my son just got sick this morning, as my daughter has gotten better enough to go to school today, we are back on that train, and And yeah, so we will rank some NES games this week. That'll probably happen Friday. I imagine we'll be on the other side of this stuff by Friday, but if not, we'll do it Thursday night, or we'll do night stream. We'll figure it out. Games will get ranked one way or the other. And yeah. So if I don't hear from you if you're just listening to the podcast, have a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, all that sort of stuff, and I'll see you on the podcast next time. Otherwise, yeah, some other streams, maybe not a stream tomorrow. Again, a lot to figure out. Everything is in flux again. I'm very despondent. I don't know. It's it's been like this since before Halloween, this cycle. My daughter is now on amoxicillin. She has an ear infection, but she's feeling better. So anyway, get all that pus out of your ears, people. We'll see you soon. Bye.